Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Bible in a Year 2021. We are on day 272. This is the last of Nehemiah, chapters 11, 12, 13. We're also going to look at a pilgrimage song in Psalm 126. Okay, so now we had mentioned a couple of days ago that the city was empty, and it's now time that Nehemiah deals with this empty city. And we're told in verses 1 and 2, the leaders of the people lived in Jerusalem. The rest of the people cast lots. I love that. Cast lots to bring 1 out of 10 to live in the city of Jerusalem, while the remaining 9 stayed in the other towns. The people blessed those who agreed to live in Jerusalem, because Jerusalem's a mess. Okay, the temple is built. There's a few scattered houses that they've managed to put together for the leaders. There is the wall, and that's been the major construction. And now it's time to start building the other structures, especially the homes. So they have to make this arrangement because it's not going to be an easy go. In chapter 12, verse 24, we have Nehemiah putting things in order now. So these were the leaders, the Levites, Hashabiah, Sarabiah, and Jeshua, Kadmiel's son, and their associates, who stood opposite them to praise and give thanks in turn according to the commandment of David, the man of God. Now, I'm picking this one example out of a huge list of things that he's putting in order. And the reason I picked it out was according to the commandment of David, the man of God. This is a theme that we're going to see running through here, because they've looked at the golden age. And the golden age was not Solomon. Maybe there was more money and stuff at that time, but the golden age relationship with Yahweh was under David. And that's what they're looking to be able to establish. They're not looking for the riches to be established. They're looking for the relationship. So they bring back the worship that David had established. Then we have the time of the walls being dedicated here in verse 27. When it was time for the dedication of Jerusalem's wall, they sought out the Levites in all the places where they lived in order to bring them to Jerusalem to celebrate the dedication with joy, with thanks and singing, and with cymbals, harps, and lyres. What's the one thing that David learned? Don't do anything related to the Lord without the Levites. Remember when he tried to bring the chest of the covenant back, and he did it wrong, and he needed to do it with the Levites. So they've learned from that, and so they went throughout the land and they found all the Levites that they could and brought them back for this great grandiose celebration. And it's a time of great joy. The city is being reestablished here. This famous city, which houses the presence of the Lord. So in verse 43, they offered great sacrifices on that day and rejoiced, for God had made them rejoice with great joy. The women and children also rejoiced, and the sound of the joy in Jerusalem could be heard from far away. Yeah, it was quite a party. And then we just see getting back to basics, just getting everything reestablished here. As we were saying, going back to that golden age under David. They performed the service of their king, of their God, in verses 45 to 46. They performed the service of their God and the service of purification, as did the singers and the gatekeepers, according to the command of David and his son Solomon. Long ago, in the days of David and Asaph, there was a leader of the singers, and there were songs of praise and thanks to God. That was back then. And they were paid by the king and established by the king, and they were looked after. And here there is a distinction. In the days of Zerubbabel and of Nehemiah, all Israel gave the daily portions for the singers and gatekeepers. So it was the people. See, it went from a top down to a grassroots thing. Okay, that's what has happened here. It's gone to a grassroots thing. It was the leaders that led them astray. So now this is being established from the grassroots. It's the grassroots that are providing for the singers and the gatekeepers. They also set aside the portion for the Levites, and the Levites set aside the portion for the Aaronites, just like it was established under Moses. This is how it was supposed to be. Nehemiah went away for a little while. He shouldn't have done that because he came back and he had quite the mess to clean up. So just some things he had to take care of. Chapter 13, verses 6 and 9. I wasn't in Jerusalem while this was happening because I had gone to Babylon's king Artaxerxes in the 32nd year of the king. After some time, I asked the king's permission to return to Jerusalem. That was when I saw the wrong that Eliashib had done on behalf of Tobiah by preparing him a room in the courtyards of God's house. I was very angry and threw all of Tobiah's household furniture out of the room. Then I gave orders that the rooms be purified, and I put back the temple equipment along with the grain offering and the incense. So, it's just well known that Gentiles just weren't allowed into that portion of the temple. There was a Gentile court, that's where they were allowed, but they definitely were not allowed into this proper area. And to set up an apartment for, whoa. But understand things, if the Israelites who knew the law well, who received it, went off the rail and failed to follow it, how much more these people where it's just being reestablished with them again. This is a friend. Why not look after a friend? Why can't you look after a friend? Put it in today's context, but understand that these things, the instruction is being reestablished here. Verses 10 to 11, here's another problem. I also found out that the Levites hadn't been given their portions, so they and the singers who did the work had gone back to the fields. So I scolded the officials, asking, why is God's house being neglected? I gathered them together and set them in their stations. Hadn't we just read that they said they would not neglect the house of God? Did they not say that? Yeah, it doesn't take us much, does it, to get distracted and forget. Verse 15, in those days I saw people in Judah using the wine presses on the Sabbath. They were also collecting piles of grain and loading them on donkeys, as well as wine, grapes, figs, and every kind of load, and then bringing them to Jerusalem on the Sabbath. I warned them at that time against selling food. Yeah, the Sabbath is something that we've let go of. I've been trying to reestablish that in my life. You wouldn't believe how hard that is when you're pulled in so many different directions. But for a very practical reason, the Sabbath had a purpose. It's a day of rest. Everything else got built upon that, but it needs to be understood that this is a day of rest. It's a day when you stop and you rest and you give thanks and you praise the God who has given us work to do, who gives us the strength and the energy for that work. But it's because our bodies need rest as well. Our minds need rest as well. That rest is absolutely vital. And here they've again been neglecting it. And then then we have this whole thing about dealing with people from the outside. In addition, people from Tyre who lived in the city were bringing in fish and all kinds of merchandise and selling them to the people of Judah on the Sabbath. This happened in Jerusalem itself. So here he has to deal with a world that just can't understand, doesn't understand. Most people would not understand why you do certain things and why you don't do certain things. And it's, you can try to explain it to them, but it doesn't matter whether they understand it or not. It is something that we do or don't do because of our relationship with the Lord. And so we see here, verses 19 to 21. So when it began to grow dark at the gates of Jerusalem before the Sabbath, I gave orders that the doors should be shut. I also ordered that they shouldn't be reopened until after the Sabbath. To make sure that no load would come into the city on the Sabbath, I stationed some of my own men at the gates. Once or twice, the traders and sellers of all kinds of merchandise spent the night outside Jerusalem. But I warned them, why are you spending the night by the wall? If you do that again, I will lay hands on you. You gotta love Nehemiah. Yeah, what a guy. At that point, they stopped coming on the Sabbath. But sometimes you have to be very forceful with certain people. And on top of that, he was dealing with God's people who just refused to understand. Verses 23 to 25. Also in those days, I saw Jews who had married women of Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Half of the children spoke the language of Ashdod or the language of various peoples. They couldn't speak the language of Judah. So I scolded them and cursed them and beat some of them and pulled out their hair. I also made them swear a solemn pledge in the name of God, saying, you won't give your daughters to their sons in marriage or take their daughters in marriage for your sons or yourselves. Yeah, I just had a flash through my mind. For those who live in Quebec, you know what a touchy subject this is. That when immigrants come in, they're expected to know, even before getting here, the language of the land. And I get a picture our Premier Legault walking through the streets, pulling people by the hair, smacking them with sticks and saying, learn the language. Anyway, that doesn't belong here. I'm sorry. It just came to mind. We see here in verses 30, 31, just finishing off here, Nehemiah, he really, it was his heart to do his very best for the people and for Yahweh to reestablish Jerusalem, not just to establish it as a city, but establish the culture, to establish the relationship with Yahweh again, to establish their identity as a people. And so I purified them of everything foreign and established services of the priests and Levites with specific duties for each person. I also provided the wood offering at appointed times, as well as for the early produce. Remember me, my God, for good. And it would seem that Nehemiah then went back to Babylon after establishing all these things. And how hard it must have been, because his heart was really for the city, but he was only there under the authority of the Babylonian king. So, yeah, there you go, Nehemiah. We don't have much longer to go before we are finished. The Old Testament will move into the New Testament, and we will move into our new format at that time as well. Just to finish off here with Psalm 126. And this is referred to as the pilgrimage song. And it's all about Jerusalem. Our mouths were suddenly filled with laughter. Our tongues are filled with joyful shouts. It was even said at that time among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. Yes, the Lord has done great things for us, and we are overjoyed. This could have been one of the songs that was being sung with the dedication of the wall as everything was being reestablished. And verses 5 to 6, let those who plant with tears reap the harvest with joyful shouts. Let those who go out crying and carrying their seeds come home with joyful shouts, carrying bales of grain. And this has been their experience. They were sent into exile in tears, but they're coming back into Jerusalem now with great joy. Okay, so yeah, you guys have a blessed and wonderful day, and we will catch up again tomorrow. God bless.